The diner smelled like overfried bacon grease and heartbreak. Neon lights flickered against the window, buzzing like a bad hangover, and every fork clink, every sip of stale coffee, sounded louder than it should have. At 11:04 p.m., Lisa slid into a booth like a woman walking into her own funeral. Mascara streaked her cheeks in thick black trails, and her hair looked like it had lost the will to live about 3 hours before she did. She muttered under her breath, "Don't cry, don't cry. Keep it together, Lisa." But the tears still snuck out anyway, like toddlers at Chucky. Cheese, who refused to be contained, that a couple of truckers at the counter stopped chewing long enough to stare. A waitress with teased hair and the tired face of someone who had seen every kind of drama unfold in this greasy spoon cocked her head, deciding whether to fetch coffee or popcorn. Lisa didn't notice. Her hands were trembling too badly to steady the menu. She wasn't hungry anyway. She wasn't there for pancakes. She was there because she had hit a level of desperation so low it felt like the basement of Blockbuster Video in 2003, just before the whole thing went under. Begging. That's what it had come to. Not a word Lisa ever thought would appear on her vision board. She used to imagine travel, success, maybe a cute condo with French doors, and a little dog that wore sweaters. She did not imagine herself begging a man who thought Axe body spray counted as cologne. Yet here she was. And the worst part wasn't even the begging. It was who she was about to beg to. If life had a laugh track, this would have been the moment it went full Friends, the part where Ross screams, "We were on a break." Except Lisa didn't feel like laughing. She felt like she'd been rickrolled by the universe. She slumped forward, forehead pressing against the sticky tabletop, and let her mind rewind like an old VHS tape. Back to when things weren't a car crash. Back when Chad, yes, that Chad, still made her laugh. She remembered the first time she met him, a party in the mid-2000s, Nickelback blasting ironically, red plastic cups everywhere. He wore a leather jacket 2 sizes too small and told everyone he was basically the next Mark Zuckerberg. She laughed then, not because it was funny, but because his confidence was so absurd she couldn't look away. For a while, it worked. He had charm, the kind of charm you find in used car salesmen and reality TV contestants. He knew how to make promises with that slick grin of his. Promises like, "I'll take care of you, and we'll build something real." Back then, Lisa believed him. She was 23, with bangs that weren't working and optimism that was. He made her feel like life was about to be a romantic comedy where she got the guy and the happy ending. Turns out, it was more like a dark comedy written by someone who binge-watched too much Jerry Springer. Because Chad wasn't a leading man. He was a walking scam, a knockoff brand of Ryan Gosling if Ryan Gosling had been raised on protein powder and pyramid schemes. Marriage to him was like playing the world's longest game of Monopoly, where he owned Boardwalk and Park Place, and she kept getting stuck in jail. He gaslit her into thinking the problems were hers. When he spent rent money on a motorcycle he couldn't even ride, somehow it became her fault for not being more supportive. When he flirted with waitresses right in front of her, he'd shrug and say, "Relax, it's harmless. You're too sensitive." By year 3, Lisa had mastered the art of crying silently in the shower so he wouldn't hear. By year 5, she didn't even cry anymore. She just scrolled through Facebook on her cracked iPhone, envying college friends who posted about babies and new homes while she posted funny memes to disguise the fact her life felt like one long cringe compilation. The divorce should have been freedom. She pictured herself strutting away like Julia Roberts at the end of Erin Brockovich. Instead, it was more like Ross and Rachel on repeat. On again, off again drama, with no laugh track this time. The paperwork said it was over, but emotionally, financially, spiritually, Chad still had hooks in her. And tonight, she had to face him again. Lisa lifted her head from the table. The reflection in the chrome napkin holder was not flattering. Smudged eyeliner, puffy eyes, the whole raccoon at a rave look. Pathetic, she whispered to herself. She hated that word, but it felt true. She hated even more that she was about to give Chad exactly what he wanted. Proof that she couldn't survive without him, that it wasn't supposed to be this way. After the divorce, she thought she'd reinvent herself. New job, new city, maybe even a podcast called Diary of a Divorced Queen, where she spilled tea on men like Chad while sipping wine. Instead, her apartment reeked of reheated Hot Pockets and desperation. The neighbor's dog barked through the walls, mocking her loneliness. Even the Wi-Fi mocked her, It kept cutting out in the middle of Netflix binges, leaving her frozen mid-sob on screen like a bad meme. But rock bottom isn't one moment. It's a collection of them, stacked on top of each other like a sad Jenga tower. And for Lisa, the tower had finally collapsed. She needed something from Chad. Money. A favor. She hadn't decided yet. What she knew was this. She was about to walk straight into the lion's den, and the lion had perfect teeth because he still used his mom's dental insurance. The waitress poured her coffee without asking, sliding the mug across the table. "Rough night, hon?" she asked. Lisa laughed, but it came out broken, like the sound of a VHS tape chewed up in the machine. Something like that. And then the door chimed. That sound, the little bell above the diner door, made her blood run cold. She didn't need to look up to know who it was. The air shifted, charged with smugness, and Lisa knew. Chad, he strolled in like he owned the place, his leather jacket gleaming under fluorescent lights, that grin plastered across his face. The kind of grin that made you want to slap it and also disinfect it. He scanned the room, saw her, and stopped dead in his tracks. Lisa's breath hitched. She had rehearsed this in her head. What she'd say, how she'd hold herself, the exact words that would keep her dignity intact. But all that fell apart when their eyes locked. Because in that instant, with the whole diner watching, with the truckers pausing mid-bite and the waitress raising her brows, Lisa realized something terrifying, that he looked happy. And that was worse than anything else. Because if Chad was happy, then what did that make her? Her nails dug into her palms as she forced herself not to look away. Begging wasn't glamorous. It wasn't dignified. But tonight, it was necessary. She needed something from him, and he knew it. The problem was, he wasn't the kind of man who gave without taking 10 times more. Lisa forced a smirk, even though her chest felt like it was caving in. "Well," she said, her voice steady but cold. "Look who crawled out of 2007. Chad chuckled, sliding into the booth across from her like it was a throne. "Miss me already, babe?" And just like that, the game had begun. She knew this night would change everything. She didn't know how yet, but the way he looked at her, cocky, careless, certain he was still the one in control, sparked something dangerous in her. Not love, not regret, something else, something sharp. And for the first time in years, Lisa felt the tiniest flicker of power return. She sipped her coffee, burning her tongue but not breaking eye contact. "Let's just say," she whispered, "you're about to be very surprised." The sun was setting like it had a grudge, bleeding orange and purple across the sky as Lisa stood in front of the barbecue pit that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the Clinton administration. The smell of lighter fluid and overcooked hot dogs filled the air, mixing with the hum of conversation and the squeals of kids running through sprinklers. This was supposed to be a casual backyard gathering. A couple of beers, some potato salad, maybe a chance to feel normal for once. She had even convinced herself to put on eyeliner and jeans that actually buttoned. She wasn't here to make a scene. She wasn't here to think about Chad. Of course, the universe is never that kind. She was laughing politely at a dad joke about lawnmowers when the bass line of a boy band classic cut through the chatter. It was "Everybody, Backstreet's Back," blasting from a car that screeched to a stop out front. The timing was too theatrical to be coincidence. Heads turned, and Lisa felt her stomach drop. There he was, Chad, climbing out of his leased black SUV like a reality TV contestant making his big entrance. His leather jacket caught the last of the sunlight. His grin spread across his face like he had practiced it in the mirror. "Lord help me," Lisa muttered, grabbing a plastic cup of soda like it was holy water. Chad strutted through the gate, the music still thumping, his sunglasses perched unnecessarily on his forehead. In tow, clinging to his arm, was a girl who looked barely old enough to rent a car. She had glitter eyeliner, a phone ring light clipped to her purse, and the general aura of someone who thought TikTok was a career path. The two of them radiated smugness, the kind of smugness that made you want to invent new swear words. "Lisa." Chad's voice boomed like a used car salesman on his last chance at commission. "Didn't know you'd be here." Of course he knew. The friend hosting had probably mentioned it. And Chad, being Chad, would never pass up the chance to make an entrance where Lisa happened to be. She forced a smile so thin it could have been mistaken for dental pain. "Chad," she said, her tone flat. "Still stuck in 1999, I see." He ignored the jab, tugging his girlfriend closer. "This is Tiffany," he announced to the crowd, puffing his chest. She's, like, blowing up on TikTok. Her last dance video hit 100K views. Tiffany giggled and gave a little wave, already recording the scene on her phone like she was live streaming from the battlefield. Lisa felt her cheeks burn, not from jealousy, but from the sheer absurdity. She was living in a sitcom without the paycheck. It started small. Chad making little digs. Lisa, you still at that? What's it called? Job? He stretched the word like it was foreign to him. Did Blockbuster finally reopen? Laughter bubbled around them. Not cruel laughter, just the awkward chuckles of people who didn't know where to look. Lisa swallowed hard, pretending her soda was stronger than it was. She wanted to disappear into the potato salad. She wanted to be anywhere but standing in the shadow of a man who thought his glory days were still ahead of him. But it wasn't just the jokes. It was the way Tiffany held her phone higher, angling it toward Lisa, smirking as if humiliation was content. And then it happened. The trigger, the shove off the cliff. Chad slung an arm around Tiffany and spoke loud enough for the whole backyard to hear. You know, babe, some women just can't handle being replaced. Like Lisa here, still single, still struggling. It's sad, really. But hey, you dodged a bullet. The words hit like a punch, and before Lisa could stop herself, her face betrayed her. Her eyes watered, her lips trembled, and Tiffany's phone caught every second. Click. Record. Upload. #DesperateX. Lisa bolted to the bathroom inside, slamming the door and leaning against it, chest heaving. Her reflection in the mirror looked wrecked. Smeared eyeliner, flushed cheeks, the whole tragic package. She gripped the sink, forcing herself to breathe. Her phone buzzed in her back pocket, the notification lighting up the cracked screen. Tiffany had already posted the clip. The caption read, "When your ex-wife can't let go, face with tears of joy, #DesperateX, #girlboss, #bye." The comments were already rolling in. Laughing emojis. Snarky remarks. Someone even wrote, "She looks like Ross when he found out Rachel moved on." Lisa's stomach turned. She slid to the tiled floor, burying her face in her hands. For a second, she let herself drown in it. The shame, the anger, the hopelessness. Celine Dion's voice floated faintly from someone's Bluetooth speaker outside, singing about hearts going on, but hers felt like it had already stopped. This was rock bottom. This was lower than rock bottom. This was digging through rock bottom with a plastic spoon while people filmed you doing it. But then, somewhere in that pit of humiliation, came a spark. Not the warm spark of hope, but something sharper, hotter. Anger. She stood up, wiped her face with a paper towel, and stared at herself again. Yes, she looked wrecked. Yes, she'd been humiliated. But beneath that, in her eyes, something had shifted. She wasn't just broken anymore. She was furious. Chad wanted her to beg. Tiffany wanted content. But Lisa? Lisa wanted revenge. When she walked back outside, she didn't slink. She didn't hide. She plastered on a smile that was all teeth, the kind of smile that scared men who thought they were in control. People looked at her differently now, maybe sensing the shift. Chad smirked, still performing, still convinced he had won. He raised his beer. "Glad to see you're pulling yourself together, babe." Lisa clinked her cup against his bottle, her nails clicking against the glass. "Oh, don't worry, Chad," she said sweetly, eyes glinting. "I'm just getting started." He laughed, not realizing she meant it, not realizing the stage he had just set for his own downfall. Tiffany twirled her hair, oblivious, already editing clips on her phone. But Lisa knew. She could feel it, deep in her bones, like the opening notes of a song before the beat drops. This wasn't the end of her humiliation. It was the beginning of something else entirely. Something that was going to flip the script so hard, the whole neighborhood would hear the crash. She sipped her soda and looked around at the friends who had pretended not to notice her humiliation. They wouldn't be laughing when she was done, because if Chad thought she was the desperate one, he was about to learn what desperation really looked like. Lisa had promised herself she wouldn't cry again, not after that barbecue fiasco, but the universe apparently had a sick sense of humor. She found herself on her couch 2 days later, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of pizza rolls, watching late-night reruns of Friends. Ross was whining about divorce number 3, and Lisa muttered, "At least you don't have TikTok teens roasting you in the comments section, buddy." Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She didn't even want to look, but curiosity was stronger than dignity. Tiffany's video had cracked 50,000 views. The top comment read, Imagine peaking in 2007 and still not moving on. Yikes. Lisa tossed the phone down like it had burned her. She tried telling herself it didn't matter. That Chad's digs and Tiffany's ring-light cruelty were just noise. But the truth was louder. The truth was that everyone in their social circle had seen it, and now she was that ex, the one people whispered about at cookouts. She couldn't let that stand so she tried the civil route. Lisa called Chad one evening, steadying her voice like she was about to negotiate a hostage release. "Look," she said, "whatever we had is over. I don't care who you date. I don't care what you do. Just stop dragging me into your circus. Delete that video." Chad's laugh on the other end made her skin crawl. "Lisa, babe, people love it. You went viral. You should be thanking us. Not everyone gets a second shot at fame after 30. It's humiliating." She snapped. He chuckled again, smug as ever. "Humiliation is just free publicity. Besides, you never had much of a sense of humor. That's why we didn't work out. Lighten up, it's just a joke." She hung up before she could scream, her nails biting crescents into her palms. The civil route was useless. Chad wasn't interested in peace. He wanted control. He wanted her small, embarrassed, and invisible, but the humiliation didn't stop with one video. No, Chad escalated. He started posting little clips of his new life, posing with Tiffany in rented sports cars, holding champagne bottles in hotel rooms he couldn't afford, tossing out casual digs at people who just can't let go of the past. It didn't take a genius to know who he was talking about. Lisa tried ignoring it. She really did. She threw herself into the dating apps, thinking maybe if she moved on, the noise would fade. Her first date was with a guy named Brian, who spent the entire evening explaining the resale value of his Pokemon card collection. Date 2 was worse. A man who quoted Eminem lyrics like they were scripture, rapping whole verses in the middle of a Chili's. Lisa excused herself to the bathroom and never came back, driving home with mozzarella sticks in a to-go box, and the crushing realization that the dating pool was more like a puddle. Meanwhile, Chad was thriving in his own delusional way. Every time Lisa logged on his social media, there he was, posting inspirational quotes stolen from Pinterest, flexing in gym mirrors, talking about his entrepreneurial grind. People in their circle ate it up, half believing he'd turned his life around. Lisa knew better. She had seen the overdue bills, the debt collector's letters. She knew the Rolex he flaunted was a knockoff and the SUV he drove was leased within an inch of repossession, and yet, no one else seemed to see it. Worse, he was turning her into the punchline of his comeback story. Lisa felt the walls closing in. Every attempt to ignore him just gave him more space to rewrite the narrative. He was the winner. She was the loser. One night, after yet another failed date, Lisa sat cross-legged on her floor with a pint of ice cream and whispered to herself, "You can't out-Chad Chad. You can't argue with a man who thinks Entourage was a documentary." She almost laughed at her own joke, but the truth behind it stung. If she fought him directly, he'd twist it, spin it, make her look even more desperate. She needed something else. Something smarter. That night, she couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling fan spinning lazily above her bed and thought about every insult, every smirk, every time Chad had made her feel small. She thought about the look in his eyes when he walked into the diner that night. So sure of himself, so certain he still had her under his thumb. And then she thought about Tiffany, gleefully recording, turning Lisa's pain into content that it wasn't fair. But more than that, it wasn't sustainable. If she didn't do something, this would keep happening. Chad would keep circling her life like a vulture, picking apart every shred of dignity she tried to rebuild. The next morning, Lisa brewed the strongest coffee her machine could handle and opened her laptop. She started digging, not into her emails or her bank account, but into Chad. Old posts, public records, anything she could find. It didn't take long to confirm what she already suspected. Chad's empire was built on lies. He was drowning in debt, juggling credit cards like flaming torches, presenting himself as a success while barely scraping by. Lisa sat back in her chair, sipping her coffee. For the first time in weeks, she smiled. Not the brittle, fake smile she'd been forcing at parties. A real one. Because for the first time, she saw the cracks in his armor, but she couldn't strike yet. Not until she had a plan. She spent the next few weeks playing the part of the quiet, defeated ex. She let Chad think he'd won. She even stopped reacting to his posts, giving him the illusion of victory. But behind the scenes, she was watching, waiting, gathering. Every boast, every brag, every slip of arrogance. She collected them all. And as she pieced together his fraud of a life, she realized something else. Chad's biggest weakness wasn't his debt or his lies. It was his ego. He needed to be adored, needed to be the star of the show. That was the lever she could pull. One evening, Lisa sat on her balcony, the city buzzing faintly below, and whispered, "You're going to take yourself down, Chad. I just have to hand you the stage." The thought filled her with a strange, electric calm. For weeks, she had been reacting, scrambling, trying to clean up the mess he made. Now, for the first time, she was ahead. The humiliation still stung. The video still haunted her, but beneath it all, there was a new energy building. Something sharp, something dangerous. She wasn't begging anymore. She was planning, and when she finally struck, it wouldn't be quiet. It would be spectacular. Lisa closed her laptop and leaned back in her chair, staring at the night sky. She thought of Chad, somewhere out there rehearsing his smirk in the mirror, oblivious to the storm that was brewing. The kind of storm that didn't just clear the air, the kind that left wreckage behind. She licked the last bit of melted ice cream from her spoon, a smirk tugging at her lips. "Enjoy the spotlight while you can," she murmured. Lisa always believed revenge looked dramatic in movies. Slow-motion explosions, villains falling off skyscrapers, courtroom gasps. In real life, revenge started with Wi-Fi and a second cup of coffee. Her plan wasn't born in thunder. It began in sweatpants, hunched over her laptop, scrolling through Chad's public posts until her eyeballs begged for mercy. She'd already mapped out his weaknesses. The fake Rolex, the leased SUV, the debt hidden behind motivational hashtags. But exposing those things outright wouldn't work. Chad was slippery. He'd spin it, call it haters, double down with another cringe live stream about the hustle never stops. He needed to undo himself. And Lisa had just the bait. She created a persona. On a throwaway account, she became Vivian LaRue, a glamorous investor with a taste for bold ventures and risk-taking men. The profile was perfect, stock photos of chic businesswomen, captions sprinkled with finance buzzwords, the occasional motivational quote stolen from Forbes. Within 48 hours, Chad followed her back. Within 72, he slid into her DMs. "Hey Vivian, love your vibe. I'm an entrepreneur too. Maybe we should connect." Lisa nearly choked on her coffee. Entrepreneur? The man once tried to sell essential oils on Facebook. She typed back, keeping her replies breezy, curious, never too eager. Chad filled the silence with bragging. He sent pictures of his car, of champagne glasses in hotel lobbies, of Tiffany blowing kisses at the camera. He talked about upcoming ventures and exclusive opportunities. It was like watching a man audition for Shark Tank without realizing the sharks could smell desperation. The more he talked, the more rope he handed her. He begged Vivian for a meeting, hinting at business deals, asking if she had investors who'd back his vision. Lisa strung him along, capturing screenshots of every ridiculous claim. But the trap needed more than DMs. It needed spectacle, and fate delivered it in the form of an invitation, a wedding. Their mutual friend Mark was getting married, the kind of fancy event where everyone dressed to the nines and pretended they weren't judging the buffet. Chad was going, of course. He'd never miss a chance to perform. Tiffany would be there too, undoubtedly live streaming between cake courses. Lisa circled the date on her calendar. This was it. The week before the wedding, she pushed Chad further. Vivian hinted at potential investors who were eager but cautious. Chad, high on his own delusions, doubled down. He sent voice notes about his multi-million-dollar empire, his strategic vision, his influence. Lisa saved every word. On the wedding day, Lisa arrived in a dress that made her feel like she'd just walked out of a rom-com makeover montage. Gone were the sweatpants and the sad eyeliner. Tonight, she was radiant, calm, almost smug. The humiliation of weeks past had sharpened into something electric. Chad spotted her across the reception hall, his smirk instant. He swaggered over, Tiffany at his side in a sequin dress that looked more nightclub than wedding. "Lisa," he drawled, "nice of you to show up. Didn't expect you'd still get invites." She smiled sweetly. "Oh, Chad, you'd be surprised what people invite me to." The band played soft jazz. The clinking of glasses filled the air. And then, right before the best man's speech, Lisa slipped out her phone. She'd arranged with Mark's cousin, who was manning the projector to test a slideshow. With a nod, the cousin plugged her phone into the AV system. The lights dimmed. The screen flickered. At first, it looked like a standard wedding montage. But then, Chad's voice boomed through the speakers. "I'm basically the Elon Musk of Craigslist." Laughter rippled through the room. Chad froze. On the screen, screenshots of his DMs appeared, one after another. His boasts about seven-figure deals, his desperate pleas to Vivian about investors, his selfies in rented cars. Then another clip played, his voice cocky, echoing, "My haters just wish they were me. Even my ex can't let go." The crowd gasped, then laughed harder. Tiffany's jaw dropped. Guests turned to stare at Chad, whose face was turning a shade of red usually reserved for stop signs. "Wait, this isn't," he stammered, standing, but the screen kept rolling. More screenshots, more bragging, more lies. The final slide was the piece de resistance. His credit score, embarrassingly low, displayed in bold. Someone choked on champagne. Someone else muttered, "Damn." The room dissolved into chaos. Laughter, whispers, people whipping out phones to record. Tiffany shrieked, "You're broke?" and stormed out, stilettos clacking. Chad lunged toward the projector, but in his panic, he tripped over a chair and landed face first in the wedding cake. The room erupted. Phones flashed. The band tried and failed to keep playing. Lisa stood calmly, sipping her champagne like she'd been waiting her whole life for this. Chad scrambled to his feet, frosting in his hair, shouting, "This is fake. It's all fake." But nobody was listening. His carefully crafted image had shattered in one public, unforgettable blow. The justice wasn't just in the humiliation. It was in the silence that followed, the kind of silence where a man realizes no one believes him anymore. His smirk was gone. His swagger collapsed. All that was left was a frosting-covered mess sputtering excuses. Lisa turned to the crowd, raised her glass, and with perfect timing, said, "Guess you finally got frosted, Chad." The laughter that followed was thunderous, cathartic, almost cleansing. For weeks, she'd been the butt of the joke. Now, Chad was the punchline, and everyone was in on it. Later, as the night wound down and guests buzzed about that speech and that slideshow, Lisa slipped outside into the cool air. She leaned against the railing, breathing deep, the sound of distant music echoing behind her. For the first time in months, she felt light. Not because Chad was gone. He'd never truly vanish. But because she had flipped the script. She wasn't the desperate ex anymore. She was the one who took control. Her phone buzzed. Notifications were pouring in. Clips of the wedding moment were already going viral. Hashtags trended. Hashtag frosted Chad. Hashtag Craigslist Elon. Hashtag wedding fail. Lisa chuckled. She didn't need to post anything. The internet was doing the work for her. As she walked to her car, heels clicking against the pavement, she thought about everything that had brought her here. The tears, the humiliation, the planning. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't glamorous. But it was hers. She opened the door, slid into the driver's seat, and smiled at her reflection in the rearview mirror. "And remember," she whispered to herself, "never trust a man who still uses Axe body spray in 2025. The laughter she let out wasn't bitter this time. It was free, and as she drove off into the night, headlights cutting through the dark, Lisa knew one thing for certain. She had won. Not just against Chad, but against the version of herself who once thought begging was the only option, because in the end, the best revenge wasn't just karma.